Hey, what's going on, guys? I recently got a request to do a video on the Facebook login and graph API. Now, I've used this before, but I'm definitely not an expert. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But what I just want to kind of do some basic stuff. I want to show you how to implement the JavaScript SDK, how to actually set up a page so that we can log in, so that we can add some access control, and do a few other things. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. This video is sponsored by Dev Mountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, Dev Mountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time job in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Alright guys, so I just want to stress before I start off here that I didn't really plan anything out. I don't have all of the code in front of me like I do for many of my tutorials. So if I do make a mistake or I do something that's not the best way to do it, feel free to point it out, but just don't be a dick about it. I hate the know-it-alls that like to pick apart everything I do and try to find some fault in it, or be a wise ass about it. It's perfectly fine. I actually want you guys to correct me if I do something that's not the best way, but just do it respectfully. All right, so I have a couple tabs open here. This is the documentation for the JavaScript SDK. All right, so there's a few different SDKs that you can use for the web. There's the JavaScript, there's the PHP. You also have SDKs for mobile apps right here, Swift and iOS, Android, all that stuff, even React Native, which is kind of cool. But we're going to stick to the web and the JavaScript SDK. Alright, so let's go ahead and click on this quick start link, and we'll go down here to basic setup, and we need to include this script tag in our HTML. And this is going to load the SDK, and it's going to do everything asynchronously. So right here it says the async load means that it doesn't block loading other elements on your page. So once we run this function here, we'll have access to this FB object, and then we're going to initialize our app. You see we need to put our app ID in here, which I'll show you how to get in a second. And then we can use that FB object to access the Graph API, and we can do all kinds of stuff. Alright, now if you don't know what the Graph API is, try and think of everything on Facebook as a node. So you have users, you have their posts, their photos, their friends, everything, and picture them as nodes on a graph. Okay, so that's kind of how you need to visualize the Graph API. And you can make queries and request certain info from a user, from an authenticated user. Now, if we look over here, this is the Graph API Explorer. It's just a tool that's used to query the API. Now, we'll be doing this in the code, but this is a nice little tool to kind of see what you can do. And you'll see that right here it says /me. That represents the current logged in user. Okay, you can see I'm logged in excuse me, with my personal account, and we're saying /me and then adding a fields parameter and saying we want to collect the ID and the name of whoever's logged in. So if we click submit, we're going to get a message here that says there's an active access token must be used to query information. So with this environment here, we need to generate a token, and you can see this get token right here. If we say get user access token, and then it's going to show a bunch of different permissions that we can allow. All right, and we need to do this in our application too. You need to request certain permissions. If you've ever used a Facebook app, then you've probably seen the little pop-up that says this app wants to access, for instance, your email, or it wants to publish on your feed or something like that. So we're going to check off, if you look down here, it says public profile included by default. So that's going to allow us to get, I believe it's just the ID and the name. So let's actually get the token and not check any of these first. So if we say get access token, you'll get this little pop-up. You've probably seen this before. I'm going to just click continue as Brad. And now if we click submit, it'll get us the ID and the name, okay, because we have permission to get the public profile data. Now if I were to go on here and say let's add email and birthday and submit. Oops, I don't think I can put a space there. And it's not going to give it to us. If we click show, it says here the field email is only accessible on the user object that grants the email permission. and this one's for the user birthday permission. So let's go back to the user token here and check off email and user birthday, and then get access token. So we'll have to do this once again, and now if we submit, we can get the email and the birthday. Alright, so this is essentially what we'll be doing in our application. This is just a tool to kind of test and see what you can do, what you can get, what you can request. Alright, now as I said, we need to get an app ID. So to do that, you need to go to developers.facebook.com/apps. And I can't remember, but you may have to fill out a form to kind of register as a developer. I don't know. I've had this for a while, so I'm not sure if you have to do that. But if you do, just go ahead and fill the form out. And then we're going to say create new app and the display name. Now, you can't use anything that has the word face or book. You can't use FB. You can see I tried to use FB auth before, but that didn't work. That you basically can't have any Facebook branding whatsoever. So we're going to call this social, let's see, let's just call it social auth. Yeah, social auth, that's fine. And then your contact email, and then a category, let's say communication, I guess. Yeah, that should be fine. And then create app ID. Okay, let's do this stupid thing. What is that? Is that an L? N8. I hate these. CNCT. Is that right? Okay. And now what we want to do is choose what type of app this is going to be, or just add a product to it. A Facebook login is what we want. But you can also do analytics, Messenger, webhooks, marketing API. There's a whole bunch of crap here, really. You can do a lot of stuff, but we just want a simple login so that we can validate or authenticate and then use the Graph API. So let's say get started, and it gives you an option if you want to use a mobile platform. We want web, and then the URL of our site. So I'm actually going to be using my local host, so I'm going to say HTTP localhost. Looks like I had a social login before, so this is social auth, we'll call it. And then let's click save and then continue. Alright, so this is our custom call to FB init, and you can see it actually includes our app ID. So this is what we saw right here, but it's customized for this application. Yours will obviously have a different ID. So what I'm going to do is just copy this here, click copy code, and I'm using XAMPP on Windows, which gives me an Apache server, so I can run this on my local host. You can use any kind of server that you want, or just use your file system. But all I'm going to do here is create a new directory in my htdocs, and I'm going to call this social auth, and then we're going to cd into that. And you don't have to use the command line. You can obviously just use your Explorer or whatever it's called. And then I'm going to just create a file here called index.html. Alright, and then I'm just going to say atom dot, and that's going to open up my text editor in that directory. Okay, I'm using Atom for my text editor. So what we want to do is just take that code we just copied. Let's open up index.html, and I'm just going to put some basic HTML structure in here. And we want to put this right under the opening body tag. Alright, so I'm just going to paste that in here. And let's just move this over. Alright. And for title, let's just say social auth. And then you can see it has my app ID. Yours will be different. And then down here is loads the SDK. So let's go back over here and see what we get if we click next. Alright, so the first step when loading your web page is figuring out if a person is already logged in or not. So right here we're going to use this FB get login status, and that's going to give us a response telling us if the current user is logged in. So let's grab that, and you want to make sure you put that in here, okay, inside of this function. So we're actually going to get rid of this. We don't need this right here. Alright, and paste that in. If you try to put this somewhere else, it's going to say that FB is not found. It's not going to know what that is. You have to do it inside this function. So once we call get login status, we're actually going to create a function called status change callback and pass in that response. So let's go ahead and do that. We're actually going to go down here, down to the bottom here, and we're going to say function status change callback and pass in the response. And then we want to check to see if the response status is connected, because if we look over here, we should get something like this. All right, so let's do an if statement here. And let's say if response.status is equal to a string called connected, then that means we're logged in. All right, so we'll just do a console.log. And we'll say logged in and authenticated. Okay, and then let's do an else. And we'll do another console log. We'll just say not authenticated. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this, and then I'm going to go to localhost / what is this, social auth. Alright, so let's open up the console with F12, and you see we're not authenticated. So we need a way to authenticate, and we don't have that. There's nothing here. So we can create a button. If we go back to, where the hell were we? Right here, and click next. We can use this FB login button and then provide some attributes. Now scope is going to be the basically the permissions that we want, and these are identical to let's see, these right here. So you can see we can request email and user birthday and all that. Okay, so we put that in there, and then we have an on login attribute that's going to call a function called check login state. Okay, once we do that, and we're going to create that function and then use that FB object and call get login status. All right, so let's go. Let's see. Let's go into the body, and I'm actually going to just copy this, and let's throw that in there. Okay, and for now we'll just keep public profile and email, and we want to create this check login state, so we can get that from here, and we're going to go ahead and put that in our script tags. Okay, and then that's going to call FB get login status, and then it's going to call status change callback again, which is this here. All right, so let's save this and see what we get. Okay, so we have a little login button. If we click it, it's going to say social auth will receive your public profile and email address. Now if we wanted to add to this and say user birthday, okay, we'll go back and reload and click it again. Now this right here, submit for login review, it says some of the permissions below have not been approved for use by Facebook. So what we would have to do is go to this link here and do some stuff. So make social auth public. No, we don't want to do that. We want to submit items for approval. So automatically public profile, email, and user friends are approved automatically. Anything else, you actually have to go through and fill this form out. So for instance, we want, where is it? The hell is it? User birthday. And I think, was that it? In the email. Where's email? I probably passed it. Or maybe we don't need email. I don't know. Let's just do that. Add one item. All right, and then before you can submit review, complete the following. So user birthday, kind of a pain in the ass. I believe this is new because I don't remember doing this a while ago. Alright, so this says complete the notes for this item before submitting. how is your app using user birthday? So we could say, for instance, sends a birthday gift or greeting, adds people's information to an account profile. That's more like it. And then what platforms? We're using web. All right, and then let's see, you must show how a person logs in with Facebook. This is a pain in the ass. Drag your screencast file. So I have to make a video and then upload it showing them? That's stupid. Now, I'm obviously not going to do this because this isn't something that I'm going to want to publish. I mean, you're gonna have to do it if you want to actually publish this and put it in their, their app store or whatever. But we can still use it. We're just going to get that message, okay, this red message right here. So that's fine for now. So we'll just say continue. And now, if you look down here, it says logged in and authenticated. So what's happening is it's calling the change callback here, and it's seeing that we're connected, and it's just console logging this. Okay, so we can now log in. And if I were to click this again, it's just going to kind of flash. Now, you're going to want to hide this if they're logged in, and I'll show you how we can do that in a minute. But I do want to add a little bit of style to this application. So we're going to use Bootstrap. I'm just going to go to boot swatch, which will give us kind of a customized version. And let's grab this right here. It has the Facebook blue, so we'll just say download and then grab this link here. And let's go to our index file. And I'm just going to paste that in here. All right, and then I want to get a nav bar, so I'm going to go to getbootstrap.com. If you guys watch a lot of my videos, you know the drill. Getting started, examples, starter template, Control U, and I'm going to grab this nav here. All right, we're going to go put this down here, paste that in, get rid of the fixed top, and let's see, project name, say social auth, and let's see, we're just going to have a home link. That'll go to index.html, and let's get rid of the active class. And what I want to do is put another UL here. Actually, we'll just copy this one, paste that in, and then let's add a class navbar right. Get rid of this, and I'm going to put the button up there. Okay, so I'm going to cut that out, and let's put that here. And we can give this an ID. So I'm going to give it an ID of FB-BTN. And let's save it. Let's go back to our application and reload. Let's see, I don't want the green, I want the blue version of the navbar. So I'm going to change this to navbar default. There we go. And the button I want to move down, so remember I gave it an ID, so we can grab onto that in the style. I'm not going to create a whole separate style sheet. I'm just going to use style tags here. So let's say ID FB-BTN, and let's give it a margin top of 10 pixels, maybe 20. There we go. So now we have a little login button. Now under the nav bar, which ends right here, let's put a div and give it a class of container. And I'm going to put in an H3 here. I'm going to give it an ID of heading. And let's say log in to view your profile. Alright, and then I want to put basically some placeholders here. So this will be a div. And let's give this not a class, but an ID of profile. Alright, we're not going to put anything in here. We're going to manipulate it through the JavaScript. Now I want this profile to be hidden by default when we enter the page. Now, even if we aren't logged in, it's not going to display anything because it's not going to be able to get the information, but I still want the div hidden. So I'm going to go up to the head and go into the style and say profile, and we're going to set that to display none by default. Alright, so now what I want to do is create a function to show and hide things depending on our login state. Okay, so let's go down at the bottom here and let's say function set elements, and let's put in here, it's going to take in a parameter if we're logged in or not, so true or false. So let's call this is logged in, and then we're just going to check for it. So we'll say if is logged in, and it's also going to have an else. Now if we're logged in, we want to show the profile. Right now it's set to display none, so let's say document dot get element by ID, and we want profile, and then we're going to set the style dot display equal to block if we're logged in. Now we also don't want to show this button if we're logged in, so I'm going to just copy this and let's change this to fb-btn. Remember we gave it that ID, and we're going to set this to none. Alright, and then if we are not logged in, we want this to be block and we want this to be hidden. So let's just copy both, and we'll just change this to none and this to block. Alright, and there's other ways to do this, guys. I'm just kind of winging it. I have some snippets that I'm going on, but it's not something that it's not something that's production ready. I just want you guys to get kind of a handle on how this works. So we need to figure out when to run this set elements. So let's go, let's see, we'll do it in the status change callback. So if we're connected, that means we're logged in, so we can say set elements, and remember it takes in a parameter of if we're logged in or not, so I'm going to say true. And then in the else, actually let's put this here, and then we'll say false, and let's also put this above. Alright. Okay, so if we save that and reload, now you can see the button's gone because we are logged in. Now we're going to need a way to log out. So let's go down to the nav bar, and right where we have the Facebook login, we're going to create above it an li tag, and in here let's say we'll put an a tag, and then this is going to go nowhere because we're going to actually add an event handler. So let's say on click, it's going to call a function called logout. Alright, so let's save that. And there we have our logout link. Now I want this by default to be hidden. So let's go up here and add it right here. Let's see, did I give it... we're going to give it an ID. So let's give... yeah, we'll just say ID. And let's set that to logout. Alright, I apologize if you can hear my son yelling upstairs. And then here, let's put logout. Alright, and then we also want to add it to set elements. So if we are logged in, we want it to be shown. So let's just copy that. And we'll change this to logout. Alright, and then if we are not logged in, we want it hidden. So we'll say logout equals none, or style display equals none. Alright, so let's create the logout function. Oops. Okay, and all we have to do here is take that FB value and call a method called logout. So fb.logout, and then that's going to take in a callback and a response will be returned. We don't need to use that though. All we need to do here, it'll do the logout, but we also want to do the set elements. Okay, because we want to pass along that we're no longer logged in, so false. Alright, so let's go ahead and reload, and then if we click logout, you can see right here the button has changed and we should be logged out. If we go ahead and reload, you'll see we get not authenticated. Now I also want this heading to be hidden when we're logged in, so let's add that up here. So by ID it has an ID of heading. Okay, so if we log in again, let's see, why isn't that heading style display none? Okay, if we reload it hides, but we want it to go away right when we log in. So if we go to, actually, you know what we'll do? Let's grab this and we're going to set this to block. Alright, so now if we log out, we can see it, and then if we log back in, it goes away. Good. Now when we're logged in, so let's go to our status. Where the hell is it? Right here, status change callback, and we're connected, means we're logged in. All we're doing is setting the elements. Now we're also going to call a function when we log in, and we'll call that test API. Alright, and we'll create that right here. Okay, and what we can do now is we can access fb.api, and we can work with the graph API just like we were doing here. So let's see, refresh that. So we can say /me, and then we can add some fields. So let's say fb.api, and then in here we'll say /me, because we're authenticated, it knows who we are, and then we're going to attach the fields parameter and set that to name and email. Alright, and then it's going to take a second parameter of a callback, so we're going to say function, and that's going to give us a response from that call. Alright, and then in here let's check to make sure there's a response and that there's no error, so we can say if response and there's no response.error, then we can continue on with it. So for now, let's just do a console log of the response. So we'll save that, and then let's go back and reload, and down here you'll see we got our response, which is an object that has the email. Sorry about that, yelling upstairs. And then an ID, that's the user ID, and then the name. Okay. Now we also gave it permission to use the birthday, so we can just add on to here and say user underscore birthday. And if we go and reload, let's see what happened. It should be giving us name, email, user, birthday. Oh, it's just birthday, not user. That's the name of the permission, but the actual field is just birthday. Alright, and there it is. Cool. Now we want to output that profile information that we're fetching. So we could do that here, but what I'm going to do is create another function for that. So we're going to call that build profile, and we're going to pass along the response. Okay, and then we'll just create that right here. We'll say function build profile. Okay, and for the response that's passed in, we're going to call that user, because that's essentially what it is. And then we're going to create a variable called profile, and I'm going to use a template string. So these are actually backticks. They're to the left of your #1 key, and that makes it so that we can put our JavaScript, our HTML in here, and we can use multiple lines. We don't have to keep concatenating and doing all that stuff. All right, this is part of the ES6 standard. So let's put in an H3, and in here we're going to have the user's name. Now if you want to put a variable in here, you can use the money sign and then the curly brace. All right, and then we're going to say user.name. User is coming from here, which is coming from this response, which is coming from the API call. All right, so under the H3, let's put in a UL, and we're using bootstrap, so I'm going to use a class of list group. And then in here, let's put an li, and we're going to give that a class as well of list group item. And this is going to be the user's ID. So let's say user ID, and then we're going to put in that variable, that user.id. All right, and then I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to put some other information here. So let's do user.email, and we'll change the label here to email. And then what else do we have? The birthday. So that'll be user.birthday. And then I also want the location. Now, in order to do that, we have to add that permission request down here. So where we have this FB login, we want to add to the scope user_location. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. And just to test it out in the Explorer, we would need the permission. So let's see, user location. Okay, and then what we can do is just add on to here location, and it gives us a location object with an ID and then the name, which is the city and state. So let's do this in our application. We're going to go up to where we made the API call. Where the hell is it? Right here, and let's just add location. All right, and then down here we should now have access to user location, and we want the name field, which is the city and state. So now all we have to do is go down here and say document.getElementById profile, and we're going to set the inner HTML equal to that profile variable. So let's go ahead and save that and go to our application. And let's see, we got an error here. Cannot read property name of undefined. So let's see, is it talking about that? User.location.name. Oh, you know what it is? Since we added a new field that needs a permission, we actually need to log back in. So now if we go ahead and we click login, it's going to now ask us to share the city or the location and continue, and now we can get the data. All right, so we're pulling this data from my Facebook profile. So before I go, I want to show you how we can pull in our feed or our posts from Facebook. So if we go to the Explorer and let's change this to /me/feed and submit. Okay, so it's not getting the data. You can see it's an empty array because we need that permission. So if we go to get token and we check off user posts, and then we validate here or authenticate, whatever, submit, and now we can get the posts. So I want to display these on our page as well. So I'm going to have to put a placeholder in the HTML where I want this to output. So let's go right here, and we're going to say div ID equals feed. All right, and we're going to hide that by default, just like we did with profile and logout. All right, so you can kind of see the cycle here when you want to add new stuff. And then we'll also have to go to our set elements. And when we are logged in, we want it to display. So I'm going to just copy one of these. And this will be feed. We want that to display block. And then if we're not logged in, we want it hidden. So let's say feed and make sure it's equal to none. Alright, so let's go back up here to where we made our call. And we want to go inside of this, inside the callback function, and load it asynchronously. So right here, we're going to say fb.api, and we're going to pass in /me/feed, and then put our callback with the response that it gives us. Alright, and just like we did here, we're going to check for the error, and then if everything is okay, we're going to proceed to run a function called buildFeed and pass in that response. Alright, so let's go create that down here. Alright, and that's going to take in a response, which I'm going to call feed. Now remember, it comes in an array called data, so keep that in mind when we work with the response. So we're going to create a variable here called output, and initially I just want it to be an h3, and we'll just say latest posts, and then we're going to have to loop through the data array. So let's say for, and in here let's do let I equals 0. Actually, no, we're not doing that. We're going to say let I in feed.data, and then let's check for make sure it has a message. You'll see with this data, this one has a story, and this is a link to a video. I only want the regular posts, and they all have a message, so we're going to check for that. So if let's see, we're going to say if feed.data, and then the current iteration, and then .message. So if there's a message, we're going to proceed, and we're going to append onto the output variable. And let's use our backticks here so we can use a template string. And let's see, I guess we'll put a div, and we'll give it a class of well, which is a bootstrap class. And inside here, we want a variable which is going to be feed.data, the current iteration, and then the message. Alright, and then after the for loop, which ends right here, we need to do our output. So document.getElement, sorry about that, getElement by ID, feed, and then we want to do .inner HTML is equal to that output variable. Alright, let's save that, and we're going to have to re-log in for this to work. So let's go ahead and log in. Oh, you know what? We didn't add the permission for the posts. So I'm going to log out and go down here to the button. And we just want to add on to this user_posts. Alright, so let's try that. And it's still not outputting. Div ID of feed. And it is displaying because it's showing the H3. And then we're looping through. You know what? Let's log out and reload and then log back in. Alright, so social auth will receive your timeline post. Let's continue. And there we go. Alright, so we just had to re-log in. So this is all the text. I'm not going to go into getting the videos and photos and all that. You guys can look at the documentation and try to figure that out. We do have the time we could put for our posts. But if you do want the images and videos and all that, you'll have to add to your API calls. So let's see. Right after the message, we'll put in a span, and then we'll put in feed.data, data current iteration, and then dot I forget what it is, create date, created time. Okay, reload, and now you have the time here, and you can format that if you want. So I think that's going to be it, guys. That's how we can implement Facebook login, how we can make calls to the Graph API. There is some pretty good documentation. I mean, there's a lot, but it's pretty informative if you want to take a look at that. All the different we're working with the JavaScript SDK, so different guides and examples and all that. There's even documentation on how to implement it through Angular and React and all that stuff. All right, so hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight as to how everything works with the Facebook API and login. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. If you're not subscribed, please do so if you liked this, and also leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't, and leave some feedback, and I will see you next time.